The gas station fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stood at the counter, my 3 children fidgeting restlessly in the double stroller beside me. We were somewhere outside Austin, Texas, hours from home, and I was buying diapers because the baby had gone through the last pack faster than I'd expected. I swiped my card, declined. My stomach dropped. I tried again, fingers trembling slightly. Declined. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked at me with that expression I'd come to recognize instantly, pity. "Do you have another card, honey?" she asked gently. I didn't. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened the banking app, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The screen loaded slowly, painfully. Then I saw it, negative $473. The account was overdrawn, completely empty. Our trip money, the emergency fund, everything was gone. My vision blurred as panic flooded through me like ice water. This couldn't be happening, not now, not here, stranded across the country with 3 small children and no money. I stepped aside, mumbling an apology to the cashier, and dialed my husband's number with trembling fingers. It rang, and rang, and rang. Ryan didn't answer. Desperation clawed at my throat as I stood in that gas station parking lot, watching cars pass by on the highway. Ryan was deployed overseas with the army. Getting in touch with him wasn't as simple as calling his cell phone. There was a protocol for emergencies. I contacted the Red Cross, my voice shaking as I explained the situation to the operator. "My husband is deployed. I'm stranded with our children. Our account is empty. I need to reach him immediately." The process took hours. Hours of sitting in that gas station with 3 increasingly cranky children, nursing the baby in the bathroom, trying to keep my 5-year-old from asking why we couldn't go home yet. Finally, my phone rang. Ryan's voice came through, distant and tinny, but instead of concern, I heard annoyance. "Emily, what's going on? They pulled me out of a briefing for this." I explained about the empty account, about being stranded, about the kids. He sighed heavily. "It's probably just an army payroll glitch. You know how the system is. It'll sort itself out in a few days." His tone was cold, dismissive, like I was overreacting to nothing. I wanted to believe him, desperately, but something in his voice felt wrong. My best friend's words from before the trip echoed in my mind. "You sure he's telling the truth about everything?" I borrowed $200 from my cousin, humiliation burning in my chest as I explained the situation over the phone. She sent it immediately through a money transfer app, no questions asked. I bought the diapers, filled the gas tank halfway, and started the long drive home. The baby screamed for the first hour straight, that piercing newborn cry that drills into your skull. My middle child needed to use the bathroom every 30 minutes. My oldest son, perceptive beyond his 5 years, kept asking questions I couldn't answer. "Mommy, why did the card not work? Is Daddy mad at us? Are we in trouble?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter, blinking back tears that threatened to blur my vision. "No, sweetheart, everything's fine. Daddy's just busy with work." But everything wasn't fine. As I drove through the darkness, one hand on the wheel and one hand holding my phone, I checked the banking app again at a red light. That's when I saw them, transactions I didn't recognize, 3 charges each for several $100s, labeled with names that made my blood run cold. Bangkok Lounge, Paradise Club, Night Services Limited, all processed in Thailand, all while I'd been planning our family trip, budgeting carefully, trying to make our money stretch. I waited until the kids were asleep before I sent the email. My hands shook so badly I had to retype it 3 times. "Ryan, I need you to explain the charges from Bangkok. Paradise Club, Night Services, what the hell is going on?" I attached screenshots of the banking statements, highlighting each suspicious transaction. His response came 6 hours later, brief and defensive. "Those are training-related expenses. Sometimes we have to cover costs up front and get reimbursed later. I told you the army accounting system is complicated. Stop worrying about it." But I couldn't stop worrying. The next morning I called the bank directly, speaking to a fraud prevention specialist. "Ma'am, I can tell you that these charges are from adult entertainment establishments," the woman said, her voice professional but sympathetic. "Bangkok Lounge is a known nightclub. Paradise Club is listed as an adult venue. Night Services is associated with escort services." The room spun. I thanked her mechanically and ended the call. Then I took screenshots of everything, the charges, the banking statements, the locations. I saved them in a folder on my phone labeled Evidence. I didn't know what I was planning yet, but something deep inside me, some instinct for survival, told me I would need proof of this, that this was only the beginning of a much larger betrayal. Ryan finally called 2 days later and the conversation exploded immediately. "What the hell, Emily? You called the bank, you're checking up on me like I'm some kind of criminal." His voice was sharp, angry, attacking before I could even speak. I saw the charges, Ryan, adult entertainment, escort services in Bangkok. You don't understand how it works out here, he snapped. Sometimes the guys go out to blow off steam. It doesn't mean anything, you're making a big deal out of nothing. You left me stranded with 3 kids and no money so you could blow off steam. My voice was rising, something I rarely let happen. Why can't you just trust me? He shot back. I'm over here serving my country, away from my family, dealing with stress you can't even imagine. And instead of supporting me, you're accusing me of what? Cheating? The word hung between us. Neither of us said anything for a long moment. Then he softened his voice, switching tactics. Baby, I love you. I would never do anything to hurt you. It's just a misunderstanding. But I'd already spoken to another army wife at the base before he called. She'd confirmed what I suspected. Ryan's unit had shore leave in Bangkok 2 weeks ago. 5 days of free time. The same week those charges appeared on our account. I returned home exhausted in every possible way. Physically from the drive, emotionally from the constant state of panic, mentally from trying to keep everything together for the kids while falling apart inside. Friends from our neighborhood dropped off casseroles and diapers when they heard we'd had car trouble on our trip. I accepted their help with gratitude I didn't have to fake. Ryan sent no money, made no effort to fix the overdraft. I waited for his next paycheck to hit the account, living on borrowed funds and the kindness of friends. The baby still needed formula. The bills still needed paying. Life didn't pause for betrayal. I moved through the days mechanically, feeding children, changing diapers, folding laundry, pretending everything was normal. But at night, alone in our bed, I couldn't stop thinking about those charges, about what they meant. About what kind of man leaves his wife and children stranded to spend money on prostitutes. Then, 3 days after I got home, an email notification lit up my phone, from Ryan's account. The subject line read, "Can't wait to see you again." My hands trembled as I opened it. The email wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone named Myra. And it was full of explicit sexual content that made me physically sick. I read the email 3 times, each word burning into my brain like acid. Ryan described things he wanted to do to her, things he'd already done with her. He called her baby, the same pet name he used for me. He talked about their time together in Bangkok like it was a romantic getaway, not a betrayal that had left his family stranded and broke. The timestamp showed he'd sent it the same week he'd abandoned us with no money. The same week I'd been calling frantically, trying to reach him through the Red Cross. The same week I'd borrowed money from relatives just to buy diapers and gas. I sat on the bathroom floor, the only place I could lock the door and cry without my children hearing. My whole body shook with rage and grief. Then my phone buzzed again. Another notification. A photo this time, sent to the same email thread. I opened it with a sick sense of inevitability. There was Ryan, unmistakably Ryan, in what looked like a nightclub. His arm was around a beautiful Thai woman. 2 other women flanked them, all dressed in tight, revealing clothes. Everyone was smiling. Ryan looked happier than I'd seen him in months. I screenshotted everything, added it to my evidence folder, and started planning. 2 weeks later, Ryan returned from deployment. He came through the door with that familiar smile, that easy charm that had made me fall in love with him 7 years ago. He hugged the kids, brought me flowers, acted like nothing had happened, like he hadn't left us stranded, like he hadn't cheated, like he hadn't destroyed everything. "I have a surprise," he said, grinning. "The annual military ball is next Saturday. I want you to come with me. We need to show everyone what a strong couple we are." I stared at him, this man I thought I knew, this stranger wearing my husband's face. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, to throw the evidence in his face and watch him squirm. But another part, the part that was learning to be strategic rather than emotional, told me to wait, to let him think everything was fine, to gather more information. "Okay," I said finally, forcing a smile. "That sounds nice." The ball was formal, dress uniforms, evening gowns, speeches about honor and service. I wore a dress I'd bought 3 years ago before the Barbies, when I still had time to care about things like fashion. Ryan held my hand, introduced me to his commanding officer, played the role of devoted husband, until one of his drunk friends leaned across the table, laughing at some joke I'd missed. "Man, Ryan, you and your Thai harem." The table went silent. My smile froze on my face, plastic and painful. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else cleared their throat. Ryan's face drained of all color, his expression shifting from shock to panic to anger in the space of 3 seconds. He's joking," Ryan stammered, standing up abruptly. "He's drunk. He doesn't know what he's saying." But his friend looked confused, like he genuinely didn't understand why the joke had landed so badly. I was just talking about Bangkok, man. Relax. Ryan grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Let's get some air. He practically dragged me outside into the cool night air, away from the music and laughter spilling out of the ballroom. We stood in the parking lot, expensive cars glinting under the streetlights, and the facade finally cracked. It's just locker room talk, he said quickly, desperately. You know how guys are, they exaggerate, they make stuff up. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Did you cheat on me? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Ryan looked away, and that was all the answer I needed. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay standing. We're going back inside, we're going to finish this dinner, and then we're going home. His relief was visible. He thought I was going to let it go. He had no idea what was coming. We drove home in silence. Ryan tried to hold my hand, I pulled away. Inside the house, after we'd paid the babysitter and checked on the sleeping children, Ryan broke down. He sat on the edge of our bed, head in his hands, and confessed. I spent the savings on prostitutes in Bangkok, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to happen. The guys were going out and I got caught up in it. It didn't mean anything. Each word felt like a physical blow. I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. There's more, he continued, and my stomach dropped further. I might have. There's a chance I have an STD. You should probably get tested. The room tilted. Black spots danced in my vision. I thought about my children asleep down the hall, about the baby I was still nursing, about the fact that my husband had potentially exposed me to diseases while I was caring for his children. How many? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. How many women? He didn't answer, just shook his head, crying now. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling my entire world crumble around me. But somewhere in the grief and rage, something else emerged, something cold and focused. A plan. Ryan had destroyed our family for his selfish pleasure. Now I would make sure he faced every consequence. I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. Friends came to watch the children. My mother drove 2 hours to help with feedings and diaper changes. They thought I had the flu. They had no idea I was lying in the dark, trembling between rage and heartbreak, unable to function. But on the 3rd night something shifted. I remembered I still had access to our joint account. I remembered Ryan's military pension information, stored in files in his office. I remembered that I wasn't helpless, even though he'd tried to make me feel that way. I got up, showered, ate something for the first time in days, and started researching. Military law regarding infidelity, rights of military spouses, legal protections, financial remedies. What I discovered gave me the first spark of hope I'd felt since this nightmare began. Infidelity during deployment, especially involving financial misconduct, could lead to court-martial proceedings. Abandoning family members without financial support violated military family care plans, and I had evidence, screenshots of charges, copies of explicit emails, photos of him with other women, a paper trail that couldn't be explained away. I opened my laptop and started organizing everything into folders: evidence, timeline, financial records, witness statements from other army wives who'd seen suspicious behavior. By sunrise, I had the foundation of a case, and I was ready to burn his world down. The first step was protecting myself and the children financially. I quietly transferred what remained in our joint account into a private account Ryan didn't know existed. It wasn't much, he'd spent most of our savings, but it was enough to survive for a few weeks. Then I contacted a military spouse legal advisor, a free service provided by the base. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Torres, listened to my story without judgment. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. I showed her everything. Her expression remained neutral, but I saw something flash in her eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition that I had a strong case. "This is significant," she said finally. "Financial abandonment of family members during deployment is a serious violation. The infidelity could be prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and if you can prove he knowingly exposed you to STDs, that's another charge entirely." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Keep collecting evidence, document everything, and when you're ready, we'll file a formal complaint with his commanding officer." I left her office with something I hadn't felt in weeks: power. Ryan had tried to make me feel small, desperate, helpless, but I wasn't any of those things. I was a mother protecting her children, and I was just getting started. I spent the next week downloading everything. Every email from Ryan's account that mentioned Bangkok, other women, or suspicious activities. Every text message, every banking transaction, every photo. I found wire transfers to Thai bank accounts I hadn't known existed. I found emails where Ryan bragged to his friends about leaving the ball and chain stranded while he lived it up in paradise. The cruelty was breathtaking. This wasn't just cheating. This was deliberate, calculated betrayal. He'd laughed about my suffering with his friends, had bragged about abandoning his children. I cried as I read these messages, not from sadness anymore but from rage. Pure, burning rage that someone I'd loved, someone I'd built a life with, could be so casually cruel. The evidence folder on my laptop grew larger every day. I organized everything meticulously, by date, by type, by severity. I created a timeline showing exactly when he'd spent our money, exactly when I'd been stranded, exactly when he'd sent those explicit emails to Myra while ignoring my desperate calls for help. By the end of the week, I had a document so comprehensive and damning that no amount of charm or manipulation could explain it away. And I still wasn't done. Because I'd discovered something else. I wasn't the only wife whose husband had returned from Bangkok with secrets. I connected with 2 other army wives through a private Facebook group for military spouses. Both suspected their husbands had been involved in the same activities as Ryan during shore leave. We met at a coffee shop off base, 3 women who'd never spoken before, united by betrayal. My husband came back different, one woman said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. Cold, distant. Then I found charges on our card for a place called Paradise Club. My stomach dropped. The same place that had appeared on my statements. The second woman nodded. Mine too, and when I confronted him he blamed me, said I wasn't supportive enough of his deployment stress. We shared information, compared notes, pieced together a pattern of behavior that went beyond individual failings. This was systematic. Multiple men from the same unit engaging in the same behaviors, covering for each other, lying to their families. Together, we had evidence of a culture of misconduct. And together we were stronger than any of us would have been alone. Are you filing complaints? I asked. Both women nodded. My lawyer says we should coordinate, one said. If multiple complaints come in around the same time, it's harder for the command to ignore or cover up. The other woman pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. A list of names typed on official military letterhead. A disciplinary review list. Ryan's name was 3rd from the top. I retained a civilian lawyer in addition to the military legal advisor. Ms. Chen specialized in military divorce and understood both the civilian and military legal systems. You have an exceptionally strong case, she said during our first meeting, reviewing my evidence. Financial abandonment, infidelity, potential exposure to disease, misuse of military funds if he used his government travel card for any of these charges. What should I do next? I asked. We file for legal separation first, establishing your rights to financial support and custody. Simultaneously, we file a formal complaint with his commanding officer detailing the misconduct. The military investigation will proceed on their timeline, but the separation protects you immediately. I signed the papers that afternoon, but I didn't serve them to Ryan yet, not until the moment would cause maximum impact, because Ryan had started noticing something was wrong. I was too calm, too collected, not crying anymore, not begging for explanations. He started love-bombing me, flowers every day, romantic texts, promises to go to counseling, sudden interest in helping with the kids. It was manipulation and I saw right through it, but I played along, smiled, accepted the flowers, let him think his charm was working, while secretly forwarding every piece of evidence to the military investigator Ms. Torres had connected me with. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for it to spring. Ryan's efforts to win me back intensified. He cooked dinner, cleaned the house, took the kids to the park so I could rest. He talked about our future, about retiring from the army, about buying a house, about being a better husband and father. To anyone watching from outside, it looked like a marriage healing. But I knew better. Every romantic gesture was manipulation. Every promise was hollow. He was scared, sensing something shifting beneath his feet, trying desperately to regain control. I played my part perfectly, smiled at the right moments, let him hold me, pretended to believe in the future he was painting. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything he said, every promise he made, adding it to the file of evidence that grew larger every day. Then, 2 weeks into his charm offensive, Ryan got a phone call that changed everything. I was in the kitchen preparing bottles when I heard his voice shift from casual to panicked. What now? But I have, yes sir, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He came into the kitchen, his face pale. I have to go to the base, the commanding officer wants to see me. About what? I asked innocently. I don't know, he said, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew, somewhere deep down he knew. I watched him drive away, then called Miss Torres. The investigation has started, she confirmed. His co received our formal complaint this morning. This is just the beginning, Emily. I smiled for the first time in weeks. A real smile, it had begun. Ryan came home 6 hours later, his face a mask of fury and fear. He slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. "What did you do?" he demanded, advancing on me. "What the hell did you do?" I stood my ground, phone in hand, ready to call 911 if necessary. "I told the truth. You filed a complaint against me, with my commanding officer. Do you have any idea what you've done? This could end my career." "You ended your career," I said calmly, "when you spent our family's money on prostitutes and left your children stranded across the country." "That's you can't prove." "I can prove everything," I interrupted. "Every charge, every email, every photo, every lie you told, I have it all documented." His face cycled through emotions, rage, panic, calculation. Then he switched tactics, his voice turning venomous. "Fine, you want to play it this way, I'll take the kids from you. I'll prove you're an unfit mother, unstable, emotionally disturbed. No judge will give you custody." The threat hit its mark. My children were my world. The thought of losing them made my vision blur with panic, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Try it," I said quietly, "because my lawyer has documentation of how you abandoned your children financially during deployment, how you left them stranded without money or support, how you exposed their mother to potential diseases. Go ahead. Tell a judge about that." His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, Ryan had no response. The investigation had begun, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Ryan filed for temporary custody the next day, claiming I was emotionally unstable and unable to care for the children properly. The papers were delivered by a courier, and I read them with shaking hands. He painted me as unhinged, claimed I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy, suggested I was having a breakdown. It was a desperate move, but it was also dangerous. Custody battles could go either way, and his military status might work in his favor with certain judges. But I wasn't the same woman he'd left stranded in Texas. I was stronger now, smarter. I called Ms. Chen immediately. She filed a response within 48 hours, attaching evidence of Ryan's financial abandonment, infidelity, and reckless behavior. She included statements from the other Army wives, bank records showing he'd drained our accounts, medical records showing I was mentally stable and had sought appropriate support during crisis. The judge ordered a full review of our finances, of Ryan's behavior during deployment, of both our mental health evaluations, and she ordered Ryan to immediately begin paying child support and spousal support, backdated to when he'd left me stranded. The first victory was small, but it was mine. Ryan was furious. He called me screaming about betrayal, about how I'd destroyed everything, about how I'd pay for this. I recorded the call, added it to my evidence file, and waited for the next move, because the game was far from over and I was learning to play it better than he ever had. The medical test results came back. Mine were clean. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. I hadn't contracted anything from Ryan's infidelity. My children were safe, I was safe. Ryan wasn't so fortunate. His test showed he'd contracted an infection from his time in Bangkok. Nothing life-threatening but treatable and documented. Ms. Chen immediately submitted the medical reports to both the family court and the military investigation. "This proves he knowingly endangered you," she explained. "He knew he might have been exposed, and he still maintained intimate relations with you without disclosure. That's grounds for both criminal and civil action." The military investigator called me the next day. "Ma'am, this information has been extremely helpful. We're expanding our investigation into the entire unit's conduct during shore leave in Bangkok. Your husband's case is now part of a larger inquiry into misconduct and violation of military code." Word began spreading through the base, whispers at spouse meetings, sideways glances at the commissary. Ryan's colleagues started distancing themselves from him, some because they feared being caught up in the investigation, others because they were genuinely disgusted by what he'd done. His promotion, scheduled for next quarter, was frozen pending the investigation's outcome. His security clearance was under review. Everything he'd worked for in his military career was crumbling, and I felt no guilt, only cold satisfaction that consequences, finally, were arriving. The military spouse network had always been strong, but now it became my armor. Women I barely knew reached out with support. Someone started a meal train for my family. Someone else organized a childcare schedule so I could attend legal meetings. One wife, whose husband had served with Ryan, pulled me aside at the commissary. "I just want you to know," she said quietly. "A lot of us admire what you're doing. Too many wives stay silent about this kind of behavior. You're making it safer for all of us." The next military spouse event I attended, I walked in with my head high. Ryan wasn't there. His command had suggested he maintain a low profile, but plenty of people knew our story. Some avoided me, some stared, but many approached me with quiet support, with shared stories of their own betrayals, with respect for standing up for myself and my children. The power dynamics had shifted. Ryan, once the charming golden boy, was now radioactive. And I, once the abandoned wife, was now the woman who'd had the courage to fight back. 3 days after that event, I received a call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Major Collins from your husband's command. I wanted to inform you that Ryan has been relieved of his current duties pending the investigation's conclusion." My hand trembled as I held the phone. What does that mean? It means he's been removed from his position. He'll be assigned administrative duties until we complete our inquiry. I can't share more details, but I wanted you to know we're taking this matter seriously. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I cried, not from sadness, from relief. From vindication, from the weight of being believed finally lifting off my shoulders. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning. The papers were comprehensive, requesting full custody, child support, spousal support, and division of assets, including Ryan's military pension. Ms. Chen had built an airtight case. Ryan received the papers at work in front of his colleagues. He called me immediately, his voice a mix of rage and desperation. "You're really doing this after everything we've been through?" "Everything we've been through," I repeated, my voice cold. "You mean everything you put me through? You left me stranded with 3 children. You spent our savings on prostitutes. You exposed me to disease. You lied, manipulated, and tried to destroy me when I stood up for myself." "I'll lose everything," he said, and for the first time I heard genuine fear in his voice. "My career, my pension, everything I've worked for." "You already lost it," I said quietly, "the moment you chose prostitutes over your family. This is just making it official." He tried begging then, promising to change, to go to therapy, to do whatever it took. But I'd heard these promises before during his charm offensive. They meant nothing. "The divorce is happening, Ryan. You can make it easy or difficult, but it's happening. My lawyer will be in touch." I hung up before he could respond. The next day, Ms. Chen called with news that made me smile. "Because of the length of your marriage and Ryan's military service, you qualify for a portion of his pension under the Uniformed Services Former Spouses Protection Act. We're filing for that too." Every piece of the life he'd destroyed me to protect was falling apart, and I was claiming what was rightfully mine.
The investigation uncovered more than I'd even known. Ms. Torres called me 3 weeks after the divorce papers were served, her voice carefully neutral. "Emily, I need to inform you about something the military investigators discovered. Ryan had a secret offshore account. He'd been sending money to Thailand regularly, not just during his deployment, but for months before." My stomach dropped. How much money? Over $30,000, sent to a bank account in Bangkok. "We're still investigating where exactly it went, but it appears he'd been maintaining some kind of relationship there long-term." $30,000. While I'd been clipping coupons, buying generic diapers, wearing clothes from thrift stores. While I'd been budgeting every penny, stressed about bills, worried about our children's future. He'd been sending tens of thousands of dollars to Thailand, to women, to a secret life. "Can we get it back?" I asked, my voice hollow. "We're working on it." "The account has been frozen pending the investigation. If it's determined that it was marital funds, you're entitled to half at minimum. Given his misconduct, possibly more." The evidence was overwhelming now. Not just infidelity, but systematic financial deception. Fraud against his own family. The military investigator called later that week. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you for your cooperation throughout this investigation. Your documentation made our job significantly easier." I can't share all the details yet, but I can tell you that Ryan is facing a court-martial. He's being discharged from the Army. The hearing before the Military Review Board was the hardest day of my life. I had to testify, to recount every detail of the abandonment, the betrayal, the lies. Ryan sat across the room in his dress uniform, looking small and defeated in a way I'd never seen before. I testified about being stranded in Texas with 3 children and no money, about discovering the charges from Bangkok, about the explicit emails to another woman, about his confession of infidelity and potential disease exposure, about the secret offshore account. My voice shook at first but grew steadier as I spoke. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the witness, the prosecutor, the voice of truth. When I finished, the board asked if Ryan wanted to make a statement. He stood, his hands trembling. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice barely audible. "I destroyed my family. I destroyed my career. I understand that. But Emily, He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. You ruined my life. The room went silent. I stood up slowly, looked him in the eye, and said what I'd been waiting months to say. No, Ryan, I didn't ruin your life. You did. You made every single choice that led you here. You spent our money. You cheated. You lied. You abandoned your children. I just made sure you faced the consequences. I turned and walked out of the room, my head high. Behind me, I heard Ryan break down completely. But I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was closed. 6 months later, I moved into a small apartment near my family. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, a tiny kitchen, but it was mine. The kids adjusted better than I'd expected. They had their own room with bright blue walls and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I'd found a part-time job at a local library that let me work while the older kids were in school. My mother watched the baby those days, grateful to help. Ryan's child support came regularly now, court-ordered and automatically deducted from his wages. The divorce was finalized. I received a portion of his pension as the court had ruled in my favor on almost everything. The secret offshore account had been located and divided, giving me funds to start rebuilding. One afternoon, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a letter from Ryan, pages and pages of apologies and excuses and explanations. And a check, his final payment from the pension division, more than I'd expected. I read the letter once, felt nothing, and put it in a box in my closet with all the other evidence. History, not present, not future, just past. That evening, I sat by the window with my baby asleep on my chest, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a message request on social media. I glanced at it. The name Myra Thailand showed in the preview. I smiled, deleted it without opening, and whispered to my sleeping child, "Not today, not ever." The next morning, I donated a portion of the pension money to a domestic support charity for military spouses. Women who'd been abandoned, betrayed, or abused like I had. Women who needed to know they weren't alone and that fighting back was possible. The charity director called to thank me personally. "This will help so many families," she said. "Is there anything else you'd like to share with other spouses going through similar situations?" I thought about what I'd learned through this nightmare. About documentation, legal rights, financial protection. About the strength you discover when you have no choice but to be strong. "Tell them to save everything," I said. "Every text, every email, every bank statement. Tell them they're not crazy for feeling betrayed. Tell them that dignity isn't about staying in a broken situation, it's about having the courage to leave it." That night, my oldest son asked if Daddy was coming back. I pulled him close, choosing my words carefully. "No, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay. Better than okay. We're going to be happy." And as I tucked my children into bed in our small apartment with its mismatched furniture and secondhand toys, I realized I was telling the truth. We'd survived, we'd escaped, and we were building something new from the ashes of what Ryan had destroyed. My phone buzzed one more time, another message from a Thai number. I turned off my phone, kissed my children goodnight, and whispered into the darkness, "We made it." The revenge was complete, not through cruelty but through justice, not through destruction but through survival. We'd won by refusing to let him break us, and that was sweeter than any revenge could ever be.